The pre-dawn briefing painted a familiar picture. Mid-level drug dealer operating from a residential property in a working-class neighborhood. Surveillance had documented consistent traffic patterns, short visits, multiple vehicles daily, the unmistakable rhythm of street-level distribution. The warrant authorized search and seizure for suspected narcotics, specifically fentanyl and fentanyl-laced products destined for local distribution. Intelligence estimated quantity on premises, 2 to 5 kilograms of product, representing approximately 2 weeks of local supply. 1 primary suspect, possibly 1 or 2 associates present during operational hours. Standard residential structure, single-family home with attached garage, no indication of weapons beyond what a typical dealer might possess for personal protection. The tactical team received their assignments at 0500, 8 operators for the primary entry, 4 additional for perimeter security, medical standing by as standard protocol for any operation involving potential fentanyl exposure. Hazmat equipment staged but not expected to be necessary for what intelligence described as a distribution point, rather than a manufacturing facility. The approach to the target property began at 0545. The neighborhood remained quiet, streetlights casting orange pools on empty sidewalks. The target residence appeared unremarkable. Single-story ranch style, maintained lawn, 2 vehicles in the driveway consistent with surveillance photographs. Nothing suggested this address was anything other than what intelligence indicated: a distribution hub for a dealer moving product through established networks. The team staged at the front and rear entries. Breaching equipment positioned. Commands verified through encrypted communications. On the team leader's mark, the operation commenced. The front door gave way in under 3 seconds. The team flowed through the entry, voices calling out identification and commands. The living room cleared. Kitchen cleared. The primary suspect located in the master bedroom, secured without resistance within 40 seconds of breach. Initial sweep confirmed narcotics presence. Packaging materials on the kitchen table. Scales. Currency and denominations consistent with street sales. A lockbox in the bedroom closet containing what field testing would confirm as fentanyl. Approximately 3 kilograms matching intelligence estimates. By standard measures, the operation was proceeding exactly as briefed. Primary suspect in custody. Evidence located and documented. Warrant objectives achieved within the first 5 minutes. Then, an operator checking the attached garage noticed something that intelligence had completely missed. The garage appeared normal at first glance. Concrete floor, typical storage items, a workbench along one wall. But the operator noticed the ventilation. Industrial-grade ducting that had no business in a residential garage. An air handling system far more sophisticated than anything a homeowner would install for automotive work or storage. The operator called for the team leader. Together, they examined the space more carefully. The workbench, on closer inspection, was mounted on rails. When they moved it, the bench slid smoothly aside, revealing a steel door set into what had appeared to be a solid wall. The door was locked. Heavy-gauge steel with a commercial deadbolt. The team prepared for secondary breach, uncertain what lay beyond but increasingly aware that this operation had already exceeded its briefing parameters. Behind that door, the team discovered something that would transform a routine dealer arrest into a regional public health emergency response. A staircase descended to a basement level that property records did not indicate existed. The original home had no basement. At some point, someone had excavated beneath the structure and constructed an underground space that extended well beyond the footprint of the house above. The smell hit the team before they reached the bottom of the stairs. Chemical. Acrid. The unmistakable signature of active synthesis. This was not a distribution point. This was a manufacturing facility. The underground laboratory stretched across approximately 3,000 square feet of excavated space. Professional chemical synthesis equipment lined the walls. Reaction vessels, filtration systems, drying racks, pressing machines for tablet production. Ventilation systems designed to manage toxic fumes and prevent detection by neighbors. Electrical systems clearly installed by someone with professional knowledge. And fentanyl, not kilograms. Tens of kilograms in various stages of production. Finished powder awaiting packaging, tablets pressed and ready for distribution, raw precursor chemicals sufficient for months of continued production. The team immediately called for hazmat support. Fentanyl in powdered form presents extreme exposure risk. Quantities invisible to the naked eye can prove fatal through skin contact or inhalation. The operators backed out of the laboratory space, establishing a safety perimeter while specialized units mobilized. But the discovery was not complete. Before withdrawing, one operator noted a secondary door at the far end of the laboratory space. Another concealed entrance leading deeper into whatever this facility contained. The door stood partially open, revealing additional space beyond. When hazmat-equipped personnel eventually cleared for entry, what they found beyond that door would haunt every responder who witnessed it. A dormitory. 12 cots arranged in rows, personal belongings stored beneath each bed, and on 9 of those cots, individuals in various states of consciousness. Workers who had been confined to this underground space, manufacturing fentanyl around the clock, never permitted to leave. The workers ranged in age from late teens to mid-30s. All showed signs of prolonged confinement. Pale skin from lack of sunlight, muscle atrophy from limited movement. The disoriented affect of people who had lost track of time in an environment without natural light or external reference points. Medical evaluation would later reveal that all 9 showed signs of chronic fentanyl exposure. Working in the laboratory without adequate protective equipment, they had absorbed the drug through their skin and respiratory systems over weeks and months of confinement. 3 were in active overdose states when the team discovered them. 2 more would deteriorate during evacuation and require emergency naloxone administration. The team had prepared for a dealer with 2 to 5 kilograms of product. They discovered an underground manufacturing facility with over 40 kilograms of fentanyl and 9 confined workers being slowly poisoned by the product they were forced to produce. The medical response that followed would strain regional resources. 9 individuals requiring immediate evaluation and treatment for fentanyl toxicity, 3 in critical condition. The confined workers had developed tolerance through chronic exposure, meaning the doses accumulating in their systems would have been rapidly fatal for unexposed individuals. Even with tolerance, their blood levels indicated they were all approaching the threshold where tolerance could no longer compensate. As hazmat teams secured the laboratory space, investigators began piecing together the scope of the operation. Records recovered from the facility indicated it had been operational for approximately 14 months. Production logs showed output averaging 8 to 10 kilograms per week during peak operation. Distribution networks extended across 3 states. The mathematics were staggering. 14 months of production, 8 to 10 kilograms weekly. Total output conservatively estimated at over 500 kilograms of fentanyl manufactured in that basement laboratory. Given that 2 milligrams of fentanyl can constitute a lethal dose, the facility had produced enough product to kill 250 million people, more than 3/4 of the national population. Not all of that production reached end users, of course. Dilution, loss, seizures, and other factors reduced the actual impact. But the statistics for the region over the preceding 14 months told their own story. Emergency room visits for fentanyl overdose had increased by 340%. Fatal overdoses had doubled. First responders had administered more naloxone in the past year than in the previous 5 years combined. This single facility, hidden beneath an unremarkable house in a working-class neighborhood, had driven an overdose epidemic across 3 states. And the 9 workers confined in that underground dormitory had been producing the poison that killed their neighbors, their communities, their own family members who had no idea where they had disappeared to. Interviews with the recovered workers revealed the trafficking pattern that had supplied the laboratory with labor: recruitment through false employment promises, transportation to the facility under the pretense of legitimate work, confiscation of identification documents upon arrival, threats against family members to ensure compliance, and, finally, confinement in the underground space where escape was impossible and resistance meant death. The workers had been recruited from vulnerable populations: undocumented immigrants, individuals with substance use disorders, people whose disappearance would not generate immediate investigation. Their families had been told various stories: job opportunities in other cities, enrollment in treatment programs, voluntary departure for personal reasons. None knew their loved ones were confined beneath a suburban house, manufacturing drugs that were killing thousands. 3 of the 9 workers had been confined for over 8 months. They had watched the operation expand, seen other workers arrive, and in 2 cases, seen workers die from acute exposure during production accidents. The bodies, they would eventually tell investigators, had been removed in the night. They never learned where. The primary suspect taken into custody during the initial entry was not the operations leader. He was a mid-level distributor, responsible for moving product from the manufacturing site to regional distribution networks. He had access to the garage entrance but claimed ignorance of the full scope of what lay beneath. Investigators did not believe him, but his limited knowledge suggested a compartmentalized operation designed to protect leadership from exposure if any single component was compromised. The distributor knew his suppliers. His suppliers knew the manufacturing location, but the actual principals, the individuals who financed construction of the facility, recruited the confined workers, and profited from the distribution network, remained insulated. Follow-up investigation would eventually identify and apprehend 7 additional individuals connected to the operation, including 2 who qualified as organizational leadership. But that investigation would take months. The immediate crisis was the 9 workers requiring medical attention and the massive quantity of fentanyl requiring secure disposal. The confined workers presented complex medical challenges. Chronic fentanyl exposure had altered their neurochemistry. Withdrawal would be severe and potentially dangerous. Their psychological trauma from months of confinement required specialized intervention. Several had developed respiratory conditions from inadequate ventilation in the laboratory space. One had a partially treated infection from a chemical burn sustained during production. All 9 survived the initial medical crisis. Their recovery would extend over months, with some requiring long-term treatment for the physical and psychological consequences of their confinement. Several would eventually provide testimony crucial to prosecuting the operation's leadership. The fentanyl seized from the laboratory required specialized disposal protocols. Over 40 kilograms of finished and in-process product, precursor chemicals, contaminated equipment. The entire underground space would eventually be classified as a hazardous materials site, requiring professional remediation before the property could be released. The house above, that unremarkable ranch-style residence that had attracted a routine drug warrant, was ultimately demolished. The underground space was filled and sealed. The property was transferred to the municipality, which converted it to a small memorial park honoring overdose victims. What had the team expected when they approached that house in the pre-dawn darkness? A dealer with a few kilograms of product, a standard arrest, evidence for prosecution of a single individual contributing to the local drug problem. What they discovered was a manufacturing operation that had produced enough fentanyl to kill hundreds of millions of people. 9 trafficking victims confined underground and being slowly poisoned. A distribution network spanning 3 states, and evidence that would eventually result in federal prosecution of 9 individuals, including 2 sentenced to life imprisonment. The timing of the operation proved critical in ways the team could not have known during execution. Production logs recovered from the facility indicated that the current batch of workers had been scheduled for replacement within the week. The organization's protocol for worker replacement was never fully documented, but investigators developed theories based on the 2 workers whose disappearance the survivors had witnessed. If the warrant had been executed 7 days later, the team would have found an empty dormitory. 9 workers would have vanished into whatever disposal method the organization employed. New workers would have arrived to continue production. The operation would have continued uninterrupted. Instead, 9 people who had been written off by an organization that viewed them as disposable production equipment received medical intervention, psychological support, and the opportunity to rebuild their lives. Their testimony helped dismantle a network that had caused thousands of deaths through its product distribution. This is what SWAT raid operations can become when discovery exceeds expectation. The briefing described a dealer. The operation uncovered a manufacturing hub and a human trafficking operation and a mass poisoning in progress. The warrant authorized seizure of narcotics. The team ultimately rescued 9 people from conditions that would have killed them within weeks. Professional tactical training prepares operators for this uncertainty. You breach expecting one scenario and discover another. You adapt in real time, calling for resources you didn't anticipate needing, securing evidence you didn't know existed, protecting lives you didn't know were at risk. The 8 operators who entered that house trained for years before that morning. They had executed hundreds of warrants, most proceeding exactly as briefed. Nothing in their experience specifically prepared them for an underground fentanyl laboratory with confined workers. But everything in their training prepared them to recognize when reality exceeded expectations and to adapt accordingly. That recognition, the operator who noticed ventilation that didn't belong, the team leader who authorized secondary breach on a door that wasn't in any building plans, separated discovery from missed opportunity, separated rescue from continued exploitation, separated intervention from 9 more disappearances that no one would investigate. How often do routine operations reveal threats that intelligence never identified? How many drug warrants have been executed without recognizing manufacturing operations hidden in plain sight? What separated this morning from countless others where deeper discoveries were missed? The answer lies in training that emphasizes observation, adaptation, and the discipline to pursue anomalies rather than dismiss them. A ventilation system that seemed wrong. A workbench that seemed unusual. Details that could easily be overlooked in the momentum of a successful operation where primary objectives had already been achieved. The team could have secured the suspect and the 3 kilograms and declared the operation complete. The garage ventilation would have become someone else's puzzle to solve, or no one's, if subsequent investigators failed to notice what the initial team had caught. Instead, professional curiosity and tactical discipline transformed a routine arrest into the disruption of a regional overdose epidemic. The production logs recovered from that facility documented output that correlated with death. Every entry representing kilograms of poison that reached streets, parks, schools, homes, every date marking another week of overdoses, another collection of funerals, another group of families destroyed by a product manufactured beneath a house they might have driven past without a second glance. That production stopped the morning a SWAT team noticed ventilation that didn't belong in a residential garage. 14 months of operation ended because 8 operators refused to accept that a successful warrant service meant a complete operation. The community where this operation occurred had experienced the consequences of that hidden laboratory for over a year without understanding the source. Families had lost children to overdoses. First responders had developed trauma from repeated unsuccessful resuscitation attempts. Schools had implemented naloxone training for teachers. Churches had organized support groups for grieving parents. None of them knew that the source of their tragedy operated less than 2 miles from the elementary school. That the poison killing their community was manufactured by trafficking victims who could hear children playing in nearby yards during their few moments of rest between production shifts. When the operation became public knowledge, the community response mixed relief with rage. Relief that the source had been identified and eliminated. Rage that such an operation could exist undetected for 14 months while bodies accumulated in hospital morgues and funeral homes struggled to manage demand. The investigation that followed examined how the facility avoided detection for so long. Property records had been falsified. Utility usage had been masked through illegal connections. The workers never left the underground space, eliminating foot traffic that might attract attention. The distribution network operated through a separate location, keeping customer activity away from the manufacturing site. The operation represented a new model of drug production, decentralized, concealed within residential areas, using trafficked labor to eliminate the risk of worker cooperation with authorities. Investigators identified indicators that similar facilities might exist elsewhere, launching a broader initiative to detect underground manufacturing operations in residential zones. The 9 workers rescued from that basement returned to lives that would never be the same. Some reconnected with families who had mourned them as missing. Others entered witness protection programs. their testimony too valuable and their safety too precarious for normal reintegration. All carried the physical and psychological marks of their confinement, but all 9 survived. All 9 received the medical intervention they needed to overcome the toxic accumulation in their bodies. All 9 escaped a fate that had claimed others before them. Workers whose disappearance was documented only in the memories of those who witnessed it. That survival began with the SWAT team executing what they believed was a routine warrant. It continued through an operator who noticed ventilation that didn't fit. It culminated in the discovery of a hidden door that led to horrors intelligence never suggested existed. This is why tactical teams train for uncertainty. This is why professional discipline demands attention to anomalies. This is why SWAT Raid documents the operations where discovery exceeds expectation and adaptation prevents catastrophe. Subscribe to SWAT Raid for more tactical operation stories about unexpected discoveries that revealed threats far larger than intelligence suggested, where professional training and adaptation prevent catastrophe.